Okay, going.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Tech Thursday. It's Virginia and Liz. This
Hello.
side? I'm sorry, I don't know which side. One side. How's it going?
It is going on this glorious Tech Thursday. How are
I
you
don't know
doing
about
today?
glorious. It looks
Uh,
pretty gloomy where I am.
You gotta look on the bright side, right?
Okay, sure. Okay, fine. Sorry. Glorious day. So on this glorious day, we would like to tell people about some glorious news, just in case you missed it.
Yeah, pretty
So,
exciting on our end, but we are a little
ye-
biased,
yeah,
maybe.
well, yeah, just a little. Yep, yep. And our topic of today might give you a little hint of what our is very intimately tied with a new venture that the library is taking on. What is it, Liz?
Well, some of you may be familiar with our book chats that we do every week and post our videos to our YouTube and our Facebook page. So, an exciting spin-off of that is our Keep It Fictional podcast. That's right, you can take us with you on the go on your mobile device and listen to us talk books and bookish existential questions.
It's one of our favorite things to do, telling people about books that we love and trying to convince you to read them.
Yeah,
One of
second
our
only to the act of reading itself.
Yeah.
So lots of fun to read all the books we can and try and find those gems that we can tell you all about.
Yeah, and there are five of us on the show, and all five of us read very different things, you discovered. So there is bound to be a book or two that would interest you, we think.
Yeah, one would hope maybe one of the five of us is your reading twin, perhaps, or maybe
Mm.
you'll get inspiration to read a little bit more diversely and give something new a try.
Yeah, yeah, because and each week there's a different topic. And so we each choose a book on the topic and to tell you about. So it's a lot of fun. So please do join us and if you're wondering, like, well, I've never listened to a podcast, don't quite know what they are, heard about the name, but don't know what they are, don't really know how to get started. Well, this is the episode for you because we are going to talk about what a podcast is and how you can listen to them on your devices. So I guess, Liz, when I think about podcasts, I kind of think about it's sort of like a good old radio show in some ways, right? It's like a talk show, an interview show, a talk show. And you and I both love hockey. And I know on my commute home, I like to listen to Team 1040. Just, it's so relaxing to just hear them talk hockey. But of course, when I go home, it's like Sakeris and Price time. So I never get to listen to Donnie and Moch because they are like in the afternoon time. And so I never get to listen to them. And I do quite enjoy listening to them talk to one another and banter with Ryan. So, but if I don't drive at that time, if I'm working, then I can listen to them. Well, that's like the good old days. The good old days, they're on a travel clock. If you don't get to listen, sit by your radio, you don't get to listen to it. However, these days, their shows is also on what we call a podcast. So basically what it is just it's an audio show, it's a talk show, and you can download the recording of it and listen to it anytime at your convenience. So on my way home, I could actually play Donnie and the Moach. Doesn't matter what time it is because they have recorded it and I can play it whenever I like. Sort of like your PVR on TV or your Netflix streaming when you're just kind of anything on demand, anytime you like, they are available for you to listen to. So there are so many different types of podcasts. And, these days they always say anyone and everyone probably has a podcast of their own because anyone can really make one, just like a website. And there are so many different types of podcasts. They're the ones that we talk about, like a radio show, a news. People might have a show about their hobby, like if you know something, like, you know a lot about a particular topic, you can have a whole show on it. People have shows that they talk about books, like us. People have shows that talk about their favorite TV shows. Or some of our favorite kind is also like the good old radio play, when it's actually stories. So it's actually episodes of like sort of a kind of like a radio play. So Liz, what type of podcast do you like to listen to?
I have a bunch of podcasts in my library that are either by famous people, like well-known figures who maybe get guests onto their show, and they'll talk about current events. So they might get an expert in, for example, to talk about different topical news items like the election, per se. Also bookish podcasts. I really like hearing what other people like to read. And also, there's a few that are about like wellness and health.
Mhm.
So things like, the TED Talks that maybe incorporate speakers that talk about wellness and health. 10% Happier,
Mm.
which is about ways to incorporate joy into your day. So a whole broad spectrum of different podcasts. How about
Yeah,
you, Virginia?
there's so many different types, so many different types. I'm also kind of like you. I try to listen to more of the bookish ones. Just, it helps because there's so many books out there, can't read them all. So, listen to other people talking about it, help us at work to introduce more books to people. So yeah, the book ones. I do have a couple like, Night Vale, of course, like the story kinds. And yeah, some of the like kind of a sort of self-improvement, productivity type kind of ones. And they often, like, I love the kinds that they interview. A lot of them do really good interviews of, authors, of famous people, and to learn about what their tips and tricks are, like, so yeah, like there's all kinds of options for whatever you want and whatever you need. I think you'll find something out there. So
Absolutely. And it's just great to be able to, play a podcast while, say, you're preparing a meal, for example, or if you're going for a walk, if you're in the
mhm.
car and you can, stream it through your speakers. It's a really great way to multitask. So if maybe you're not into audiobooks, for example, or maybe you are, but you do still want to listen to something that maybe has a bit more value added information, then podcasts are a nice low commitment way to give that a try.
Yeah. And they very often like about, depends on the podcast, like 20, 40 minutes, like, they try to aim it so that it's kind of like about the time when you can, and it's sort of individual episodes. So I find sometimes, on my commute, just because I'm bad at listening to audiobooks sometimes, like I don't remember things. I find it hard to focus. So when audiobooks are often much longer, so it's kind of nice to have these like shorter episodes for my commute. So yeah, like so many options. So if you're interested, and I guess that's kind of what a podcast is. It's just a fancy name for like a show, a show that you listen to, basically. And just like any show, they have episodes that you can, and they release new ones all the time. Our podcast is a weekly podcast. So, every week there will be a new episode comes out. Some podcasts are monthly. So, and some podcasts are much more frequent than that. So yeah, lots and lots of options, lots and lots of choices. So this show, we kind of maybe show people that now that they might be interested in like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good. Let's see what's available. Should we show people our sort of the different apps that they can use to listen to a podcast and how they work?
Sounds good.
All
Yeah,
right. So
so
do you
Virginia
want
is
to go
our
first?
resident Windows and Android user, and I'm the resident Mac and iPhone user. So
Yep. So we've
regardless
got
of what,
yep, we've got you covered. All right.
yeah,
So
we've
Liz, do
got
you want
you
to go
covered.
first?
Okay, sorry, I didn't catch that. Would you like me to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm just going to minimize my screen here and
Perfect.
okay, so you can see my phone's desktop. There's a rainbow stripe across it.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So if you are an iPhone user, then you'll already have a bunch of apps installed onto your phone. So one of those is, handily enough, called Podcasts. Now I have this podcast icon up here. It is purple, so that's what yours should look like. If you can't find this icon on your phone, if you're not sure where it is, maybe when you first set up your phone, you buried a bunch of icons that you thought you wouldn't use into a folder somewhere, that's okay. Just pull down from the top of your screen. I'm not going to show you that here just for my own privacy reasons, but just pull down from the top of your screen. A search bar should come up that you can search your phone with. If you type in podcasts, then you will be able to tap and select the app no matter where it is on your phone. So what I'm going to do now is to open this app. And so right now, by default, it comes up with my Listen Now screen. So you notice at the bottom of the phone here, there's 4 primary icons. First is Listen Now, then there's Browse, then Library, and then Search. Virginia, I just want to check, can you see my cursor on the screen here? If I'm moving it around the search icon? Oops. Okay, so first off, I already have a bunch of podcasts that I subscribe to. So let's just say we wanted to see what kinds of podcasts are out there and that interest us. So all I have to do is to tap on the browse icon. That's the second icon from the left at the bottom of my screen. And here you'll see the number of podcasts that are being promoted by Apple. So at the top here, I see there's a featured show. If I swipe over to the left, I'll be able to see more featured shows. So this is, of course, selected by Apple. So this selection will change depending on what they would like to feature. Now, if we scroll down the screen, there's always a new and noteworthy section. As Virginia mentioned, there are so many podcasts coming out all the time. Lots of people getting onto podcasting, especially in light of our current health and world situation here. So this is a great way to find out what new podcasts are out there. If you tap on See All next to the new and noteworthy heading, you'll get an expanded list of these new and noteworthy podcasts. So I'm just going to tap Browse to return to this screen. There's also a heading for top shows and even top episodes. So a show is basically like if you were watching Game of Thrones, for example. And then an episode is one instance of that show. So you have your weekly episodes, so episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, etc. So not only do they rank shows by subscribers, for example, but also top episodes. So what are the most downloaded episodes of late? If you want to browse for a podcast by category, there's the categories section here as well. We tap on See All, we can see all of the different categories or genres that Apple has cataloged all of the podcasts by. And if we tap into any one of these categories, we can see a whole listing of different features for that category. So I'm just going to backtrack a couple of screens again. And then towards the bottom of the screen, Apple also has other features, sometimes seasonal, sometimes topical. So here we've got spooky stories and political podcasts, and also a celebration of Indigenous voices. All right, but say you were interested in a specific podcast that you heard about. Say, for example, the Port Moody Public Library's Keep It Fictional. Well, if we head back to the bottom of our screen, to the bottom right-hand corner and tap on search, this gives us a search bar where we can enter the name of the podcast, or even if the podcast is affiliated with an individual who's hosting, then you can search for that person as well. So I'm going to type in Keep It Fictional, and I see it already comes up as a suggested podcast, so I'm just going to tap on that. So just like any other search you would do online, so it gives us some recommendations that either are Keep It Fictional, which you can see right under the word shows. There's also some other podcasts that, through whatever algorithm Apple is using, they think maybe you'll be interested in. Keep It Fictional, of course, is our books and reading podcast. There's some other recommended podcasts by people who are authors, for example, or also talk about books. Now, if I scroll down a bit, or swipe down a bit rather, you can see it also lists some of our episodes. So you can see that all of these episodes are from Keep It Fictional because it's got our unicorn icon there next to each of them. And it gives you the date that these were posted as well. So what I'm going to do now is to tap on the actual Keep It Fictional icon there. And you'll notice that it gives you more information about the podcast. So you can see right under the name, Keep It Fictional, it has listed that it is indeed published by the Port Moody Public Library. It gives us a little blurb here that it's a weekly podcast for book lovers by book lovers. And again, a listing of episodes below. Now, say I want to subscribe to the Keep It Fictional podcast. Now, all I have to do is to tap on that purple circle that has the 3 dots inside. And so what that does is it brings up a menu. So right now, I think I already subscribed to this. Haha. So normally next to the ellipsis, you would see a button that says subscribe. So apparently I've already done that. Now let's go back to this icon with the ellipsis. You'll notice in this menu under share, there is the unsubscribe. So if I didn't want to keep it fictional anymore, I could just go ahead and tap on the unsubscribe button. And it's going to unsubscribe me right there. So from here, now you can see the subscribe button is back. So I am indeed going to subscribe to our very own podcast. All right, so now that I have Keep It Fictional in my podcast library, essentially subscribing puts it in your library so you don't have to go and search for Keep It Fictional each time. What I can do now is go to the library icon. So that's the second icon from the right at the bottom of my screen. So when I tap on library, you'll see up at the top under the word library, there's shows, episodes, and downloaded episodes. So if I tap onto shows, it will show you a listing of all of the shows that I subscribe to here. So there's Keep It Fictional right there. If I go back into the library, I can also look at episodes. So I don't necessarily have to listen to every single episode of a podcast that comes out. Maybe some episodes interest me more than others. So in that case, if I go to episodes, I can do a quick browse of recent episodes from all of the podcasts that I subscribe to. So from here, I can see who the podcast is from, the title for the episode. And if I do happen to want to see more details about, for example, this first TED Talks daily called Climate Change is Becoming a Problem You Can Taste, I can tap on the word details, and it gives me some more information about this particular episode. From here, if you wish to go ahead and play it right away, under the icon there, you'll see a play button, and you can go ahead and just tap that and stream the episode. So I'm going to go back to my library. I'm going to go back to shows, and I'm going to go back to the Keep It Fictional page. Now, on October 16th, we did an episode of Keep It Fictional on Indigenous authors. So I'm going to tap on details here. And you'll see that I can also play from here. If I tap on the dots, then in the menu that comes up, I can also save the episode. Now I can go back out to my library, back out to shows, back, and I can go to my downloaded episodes. So you'll notice here, just refreshing. So you'll notice here that these are the episodes that I've recently downloaded. And that means that if I did want to listen to any of these episodes, then I can just go ahead and tap in there and I would be able to listen to them offline. So you'll notice here at the bottom of the screen, there's a band right above the Listen Now and Browse icons. Now that takes me to the most recently opened podcast episode that I was listening to. So if you ever can't finish an episode and you want to quickly go back to that the next time you open your podcast app, then it will leave off for you there. Now, if I wanted to get notifications for when, say, my favorite podcast, whether it be Keep It Fictional or something else, has a new episode, all I need to do is tap on the Listen Now icon located at the bottom left of the screen. So it takes me to this page here. You'll notice if we swipe down, it shows us a list of latest episodes from some of the podcasts that I subscribe to, as well as episodes that I've recently played, so I can quickly go back to those as well. You'll notice that next to TED Talks Daily, in the middle of my screen here, there is a cloud icon with an arrow pointing downwards. That's a quick button for me to download the episode so that I can listen to it offline later. That's a quick and easy way to do that. You'll notice the podcast above it doesn't have that. That means I have already downloaded that episode. Now, if I want notifications, I'm just going to go back up to the top of my screen and tap on the bell icon next to Listen Now. And so you'll see that there's an entire listing of all of the podcasts that I subscribe to. By default, all of the notifications for new episodes are turned on. If I wanted to turn that off, I could just tap that. And when it's not green anymore, then I will not be getting notifications. Now, it's important to note here that you'll also need to make sure that in your iPhone settings, which I won't go into right now, again, for privacy reasons, you'll want to make sure that in settings, under podcasts, that allow notifications is selected. And also another thing to note is, as I found to my horror, you'll probably want to turn off mobile data. So unless you have a huge mobile data plan where you get so much data every month that you barely even use, you probably will only want to restrict your downloading of podcasts to when you are on Wi-Fi. So again, under settings and then podcasts, you can toggle the mobile data button, and that way you can avoid inadvertently downloading any podcast episodes while you are on mobile data. And that, in a nutshell, is the Apple Podcast app.
Great, thank you, Liz. That is so easy to use.
Pretty straightforward, yeah.
Yeah, like most of the podcast app is pretty easy to use. So, so all the things that Liz talks about, like you probably get a better sense of what a podcast is and how a podcast app works. So I'm going to switch over to show you the Android version of it. Basically, very, very similar, got the similar functions and features. So let me share my screen now. Oops, what am I doing? All right. Okay, so this is the my phone, and I've got my podcast app right on the top here. You can see this is the Android podcast app. Okay, and if it doesn't come automatically with your phone, you can always go to the Google Play Store, just like how you would download any other app. So I'm going to open that app right now. Right? And because I have same with Liz, I've already used this app, so then it might not look the same the first time you open yours. Mine, of course, have some of the podcasts that I already subscribed to. So what I'm going to do is more likely when you open your app, if you have, this is the first time you do it, you probably will see the sort of the explore screen. So let's look for some podcasts to subscribe to. So I'm going to tap on the middle button here, which is the explore screen. So that's probably more likely what you'll see when you first open your app. Now, just like on the other one that Liz was talking about, you can see there's ways for you to browse and see what kind of podcast is in different categories. You can also search for a podcast if you know the name of it. So on the top here, you can see here there's different categories. So I'm just going to scroll through them, and you can see there's different options there, and tap on any of the category that you're interested in. So say if I tap on comedy, you'll see that it will update at the bottom here, and it'll give you some possible popular and trending kind of podcast in this category. So I can also scroll to the side to see, so you can see like Trevor Noah, Conan O'Brien, right? Like they, just like Liz said, a lot of like celebrities, a lot of famous people also have their podcast, especially these days, with limited amounts of other things that people can do. So online, quite often they do a lot of that. So on the top is the different options, different kinds of podcasts that are in this category. And then if you scroll down, you see specific episodes from these podcasts that you might be interested in. So I'm going to go back up here. So that's browsing for a podcast. If you're not really sure what is out there, you just want to kind of take a look and what's available. If you are, say, for example, if you look at it like, wow, Conan O'Brien, I know who he is. Let's see what his podcast is about. Same thing, just tap on the icon, just press on the icon right there. And then it'll give you a little bit more information about what the podcast is about. And you can tap on more to get the full description of the podcast. So you can see what this one is a particular about. And then once you scroll down a little bit, you can see that so far we've got 114 episodes, and you can see that when they come out. So there's the dates for the episode, and then what are some of the people that he has on his podcast. So some pretty interesting folks on there, as you can see. Anytime, so you kind of give you an idea of what his podcast might be about, and whether you'll be interested in or not. Just like Liz said, like if you are on your Wi-Fi connection, just or if you have like a giant data plan, anytime you connect to the internet, if you want to just stream the episode, so you're not downloading, you just want to listen to it. Like say for example, I'm looking down here, I'm like, ooh, like I've got, I don't know, Keith Urban. And you're like, I want to listen to this Keith Urban episode. You can just press the play button right there, and you will automatically start playing the episode for you. So you don't even have to subscribe to the podcast or do anything like that to play one. Just like Liz said, you might just be interested in that particular episode and not the other ones. So that is how you look at a podcast, just browsing for one. I'm going to tap on the explore button at the bottom again. If you know of a podcast, if you know a name of a podcast, for example, you might want to search for it. So I'm going to, for example, just tap on the search bar up on the top, and I'm going to type in Omnibus. So Omnibus, as you can see here, and you might recognize the name of the people on the podcast, is Ken Jennings and John Roderick. podcast. So Ken Jennings, of course, like is famous from all the Jeopardy episodes and all the Jeopardy that he has won. And he has a podcast because you can imagine Ken Jennings probably know a lot of stuff and he could talk about one thing for like ever and ever. So you can see from these, he has 308 episodes in his podcast and you can see they are long. They're like an hour, more than an hour long. So, and they're always just on one topic. That's how much he knows about one thing, he and his co-host there. So you can search for the name of the podcast if you know one or if you heard of one that you like, such as Keep It Fictional, for instance. Or if you're interested in a topic, it's sort of like just searching for Google. You can also search for a topic that you're interested in and see what shows have episodes that are about the topic that you like. Or you can even search by people. So if you're looking for like, I wonder if anybody have interviewed, I don't know, Patrick Stewart, because who doesn't like Patrick Stewart? And you wanted to know what episodes has Patrick Stewart in it, you can just type in the name of the person that you're interested in and see if they are in a show. So I'm just doing a Patrick Stewart. And of course, the first thing that you come up on the top is any name, podcast name that has Patrick Stewart. In this case, is a Patrick Stewart, but not that Patrick Stewart. So that's not what I'm looking for. But if you go down and see episode results, you can see that this is actually the Sir Patrick Stewart that I'm looking for. And you can see who is what podcast has him on it. And you can, again, listen to the podcast episode right there. So that is how you can search and explore and see what is out there for you. So say, for example, I found this and I'm like, oh, like, look, is Chris Hadwick has a podcast and he has like a 1,999 like sort of episode and they got like some very good people in it and I say if you like chat Chris Hardwick and you're like, oh, like that sounds good. What you can do is subscribe to it. And just like Liz said, subscribe is basically just you add that to your list so that every time when this particular podcast has a new episode, it will let you know and it will show up on your home screen. So that's really what subscribe it is, just add it to your list so that you don't forget it. So for example, if I want to subscribe to this, I can just very easily just tap on this subscribe button. That's all you have to do. And now you are subscribed. And when you first subscribe to episode, you can see there's some options at the bottom here. And same thing, just like Liz said, you can say you want notification every time a new episode comes up for this particular podcast. You can turn that button on and off, or whether you want the podcast app to automatically download the latest episode for you, right? So this is all the options that you can turn on and off right at this point, or you can do that later. But I'm just going to leave that off for now. And so now you can see is subscribe. So if I go back to my home, which is a list of all the podcasts that I subscribe to that's on my list that I've added to my list. So I'm going to press on home right there. You can see now the Chris Hardwick episode is right. The icon of the podcast is right up there, along with some of the ones that I listen to. And you can see some of them have a little red dot next to it. That's just an indication for you to let you know that there's a new episode for that particular podcast. And you can see here by sort of chronological order, it will give you like sort of a list of the recent episodes for all the podcasts that you subscribe to. So that's what that is. Okay. So for any of these episodes right now, if I just press play on any of the episode, what I'm doing is I'm streaming the episode. So I have to have an internet connection, have to have a Wi-Fi connection. So just like Liz mentioned, if you don't have a big data plan and you're in the car and there's no Wi-Fi in your car and you wants to stream an episode, it's going to use your data up. So one of the things for any of these, what you can do is to download the episode ahead of time so that when you want to listen to it in your car, you're not wasting your data. And to download an episode, you can actually just do it right here. You can see that next to the play button, there's 2 extra buttons there. This here is what they call add to a queue. Just basically, it's like adding to your list. So just, like to remind yourself that that's an episode that you want to listen to at some point, but maybe not now. So you add it to your queue. Then the button right next to it is the download button. So if I press on that, I will be downloading this episode. And so I'm going to do that right here. Let's do a short one. So I'm just downloading this episode right there. You can see it's going to spin for a while. And when it downloaded the episode, when it's fully downloaded, then now you can play that episode wherever you are without internet connection. All right, so that's what that does. I'm going to leave that for now. Yeah, so that is how you can download episodes, subscribe to a podcast, add it to a list, and all the downloaded episodes, if you're looking for what you want to listen to, say you're in the car now and you're like, oh, I want to play all the episodes that I've downloaded, what you want to do is go to activity. So I'm going to press on that now. And you can see the first one is the queue. So remember, talk about like any episode that you want to save for later, to remind yourself that you want to listen to. You can add that to your queue. And then downloads is all the episodes that you have already downloaded. So you can see that there's the little green button showing you that it's already been downloaded. And so from here, I can choose any of these episodes to listen to because these are the ones I've already downloaded. So I'm not streaming it anymore. So that's an option there. And then one more that might be useful is this sort of subscription. So I'm going to click on the subscription button right there. Okay, and these are all the podcasts that I have subscribed to. So any of them, if you want to look at the full list and then you want to do something with them, you can find them all in the subscription tab. So I'm going to tap on this Chris Hardwick one because I don't actually want to subscribe to it. So let's unsubscribe it. So all I have to do is just, instead of, you can see it's subscribe right now, I just press on it and then it will ask you, are you sure you want to unsubscribe? So just tap on the unsubscribe at the bottom and now you unsubscribe to that one. So that is no longer on my list. Right, so that I think is basically it for this. It's pretty easy to do. And I also just want to point out, if your podcast, like right now, if I play it, I'm listening to it on my phone. If you are in the car, of course, you can connect to your Bluetooth to listen to it. I've also got the Chromecast. So if you have like any other kind of smart devices like Google Home, Google Chromecast, you can also cast your episode to your other device, to your other speakers, so that you can actually listen to it from another speaker instead of from your phone. So that's another option. That's what this little button is for. And I think that's it for me. So let me bring everybody up here. All right. So I think that's pretty much it. That's really all you need to listen to a podcast. There are other apps out there, and that you can explore. There's lots of different like sort of podcast listening apps out there, but these two are sort of like the basic ones. And of course, then you can look in other ones to see what other features that they offer. But they all function pretty much the same, I would say, right, Liz?
Pretty much. Search for or browse for podcasts, add them to your library by subscribing to them, and then play or download episodes.
That's pretty much it. So shows on demand.
Yeah, I like that. You can listen to what you want when you want, and it's like we said, it's super low commitment. So these podcasts are free. The app is free, already installed on your phone, chances are. And if you don't like an episode, you don't like a podcast, just move on to the next one.
And I find to give you a worry about storage, because when you're downloading an episode, of course, it takes up some space on your phone. Once you listen to an episode, you can always like delete it, right? So just you can delete the download and then, so you don't have to, like it's not taking up all the spaces. You can always cancel it and also delete it once you are done with your podcast. So yeah, there's so much out there.
As well as not. As well, I just want to add to that, also maybe don't select the auto download new episode option. I realized after the fact, looking at our Keep It Fictional, that I was auto downloading the episodes. So they were already in there. So the option, of course, to download the episode was not necessarily available because it was already in my library. So if you don't see that option, chances are is not being offered to you because you've already done it.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it's a good tip. Like don't do the auto download. Then that way you get to choose. Especially if you subscribe and you have lots of podcasts on your list, it could fill up pretty quickly. So just choose to download is probably a little bit more work, but at least it won't take up as much space if you're worried about that. So yeah. All right,
Awesome.
and I know for some of these shows too, if you don't have a phone, you can still listen to them on your computer. That's another option too. You can visit the show's website, and generally you can also just play right from your computer too. So it's not just limited to phone or tablet. But
That's
all
great.
right,
Well,
anything else about podcast?
just explore and have fun. They're free, so again, if you don't like it, just take it off your list. Um, but we do hope that if you are interested in bookish things, in hearing about what reads are good, or maybe reads that we don't like, please check out our podcast called Keep It Fictional. If you do prefer to see us banter and sometimes wear silly hats on video, you can also check us out on the Port Moody Public Library's YouTube channel, as well as on our Facebook page.
Yep. You would never think that book discussion could be that heated, but sometimes it does get pretty heated.
Strong opinions.
Strong opinions. Even for us, we learn a lot about each other, I think, on talking about books and on our podcast. So hope you enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, feedback always welcome, as well as questions. So if you do have any questions about what we've talked about today, whether it be our podcast, Keep It Fictional, or the podcast listening apps through Android and iPhone, please do put a note in the comments, and we always will reply to those messages.
Yeah, and if you discover any new or any good podcasts that you want to suggest to us and to other patrons, please do also add those to the comment. Always looking for new things.
It's TED Talks Daily. I'm Elise Hugh. This is wild.
I apologize. That was my phone doing strange things. That's text Thursday for you.
All right. Well, have a great week. Have a great rest of the afternoon, and we will see you again next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.